Welcome to Greystone Investment Group Brownback session. I am Rafi, Chief Operating Officer of Greystone Investment Group.
I am Jorge, CEO of Greystone Investment Group.
I'm back.
What do you mean back?
Man.
What?
It's 2 weeks
Oh, gotcha.
from
Vacation.
in the beautiful Puerto Rico. First, I want to thank Raymond that helped us in one of the Facebook Live sessions. And also thank Stephanie sitting back there. Hey, Stephanie.
Hello, guys.
Stephanie made her much awaited debut last week. For some reason, it's the most views that we've had in any video. Whatever, I guess they don't like to see two ugly guys.
Yeah, they don't like the ugly guys with sunglasses.
I know. So thank you very much for holding fort for these last 2 weeks. And let me tell you, I think it's a perfect example of why we do what we do. It was 2 weeks of recharging. One of them, no Wi-Fi, no cell phone signal, nothing. But at the same time, man, the creative juices flowed. A bunch of ideas came out. So I suggest to everyone, at least once a year, 1 week, no cell phone, no Wi-Fi, no checking Facebook status, WhatsApp notifications, nothing, and just detox your mind, and it works wonders. So,
Rafi, that's the beauty of real estate, passive income, and if you do it the right way, and if you put the right processes,
absolutely.
you could go and have your vacation and not worry about things breaking down.
Absolutely. So, where can they find us?
Rafi, they could always find us at homesforincome.com. That is homes, the number 4, income.com.
Excellent. And make sure that you please share this video in your timeline with your friends. That way they are aware of what we're doing and all that kind of stuff. Today we have a topic that has been also something that a lot of people have asked us in terms of, I hear you guys talk a lot about cap rate. In one of the videos we explain what cap rate is. It's basically the appreciation rate, the return on your investment for rentals. But a lot of people have asked us, how do you calculate it? What factors, what variables do you use to calculate the cap rate? And that's what we're going to focus in on today. So again, cap rate, it's the net return, basically the return on your rentals compared to the investment that you have made on that rental. But that means that, hey, if you make $1,000, you have $1,000 rent on a property, that's $12,000 a year. $12,000 a year. If you made an investment of $120,000, it's 10%, right? That's how you calculate it. Rent divided by investment, and that's it.
Well, actually, that's a good question, Rafi. There's 2 types of cap rates, actually.
Okay.
You have the gross cap rate,
Okay.
and you have the net cap rate.
Got it.
And I believe the one that's worth mentioning today is the net cap rate.
Absolutely.
Because that's the one that calculates everything. And when you're calculating the net cap rate, the idea behind it is for you to have a true number. Mm-hmm. And with that true number, some people, so many different people calculate it differently. So
Yes.
a lot of investors come to me and say, sellers come to me and say, oh, this is a great asset. The apartments we're looking at today, the 8 units, this is a great asset, is performing 13% cap rate. But how are you calculating that? And that's what we're going to go over today.
And what you will see is that a lot of the times the sellers will quote the gross cap rate, which is the one that I just calculated. Just the rent divided by your investment, and that's it. But at the end of the day, when you go to your bank, they never give you the gross amount. They always give you the net. It's like your paycheck. You budget based on your net, how much comes into the bank, not based on the gross and then all that kind of stuff. So it's very important that when you are making investment decisions in terms of cap rate, you calculate your own net cap rate after that gross. So you can use the gross as a very broad way of looking at it, but if you want to get into the point of investing, you want to calculate that net cap rate. Your net cap rate, which again, like you said, some people add or take stuff away. Today we're going to discuss the main, expenses that should be part of calculating that net cap rate. Some people add other stuff like financing, stuff like that. It all depends on how you do it. So what will be the first item besides rent? So we have rent, that's the gross. What will be the first thing that you'll say, you know what, you need to take into consideration to get to that net cap rate?
Okay, so obviously we're evaluating a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have property taxes. This is something important.
Taxes.
So
Taxes.
There's a few things that we're going to discuss today. Let's start with the taxes.
Okay.
So
Hey, the government needs to get paid. Uncle Sam, he's greedy.
yeah, and
He's
there's a
greedy.
misconception that people could make mistakes calculating the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
They could think that I'm going to calculate my cap rate using today's taxes versus next year's taxes. Actually, when you're doing the cap rate, Rafi, to make sure that you're more accurate,
Mm-hmm.
you tend to use next year's taxes.
Why? I just paid the taxes last year. Why use next year's taxes?
And there's actually a way of most of the cities, you could go to their website,
Okay.
the property appraisal tax website, whatever they're called, and you could actually, there's a guesstimate calculator there. But taxes, you obviously bought this asset for a specific amount of money, and the new taxes are going to be calculated based on the higher amount now, the amount that you pay for. So you might enjoy the current taxes for the next 6 months if you bought it in the middle of the year. But in reality, what you're going to be dealing with for the next 10 years, if you own the asset for 10 years, is the taxes in year 2. The taxes that are calculated in year 2.
Okay, so let's say that 5 years ago, the house was sold for $50,000, okay? The taxes that you paid when you bought the houses are based on that $50,000. But then you bought it for $80,000, okay? From now on, the taxes will be based on on that new acquisition price of $80,000. So what you're saying is, since you're going to be paying for the next X amount of years based on on that new acquisition price of 80, use those taxes to calculate your net cap rate.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Be conservative, and by the way, some counties calculate it differently.
Okay.
Actually, there's some counties that don't care how much you bought the property for. They just take an average of everyone else. But you want the point with the taxes is that you want to be conservative. You want to put a little bit of spread when calculating the taxes, 10-20%.
And go to our websites. Like Jorge said, most counties have their website where you can actually go there, get that guesstimate of how much it is, and then add a little bit of fluff just to be sure. So taxes, that's the one that we always need to make sure that we include in our net cap rate calculations. What would be another expense that you would say has to be part of that net cap rate calculation?
Absolutely. Insurance.
Insurance
is important.
absolutely.
And this is a tricky one because the insurance company that we've been using, Rafi, for the past 2-3 years, it took those years to find.
Okay.
Because it's investor friendly, know the areas that match us as investors, the areas that we don't necessarily need because these properties are not primary properties. And you need somebody, you need a partner in the insurance business that can say, Jorge, this is a 10-unit apartment building. Based on my experience, you should get this type of coverage.
Right.
Or this is a single-family home. Based on my experience, you might not need to do lower deductibles. Maybe you could increase them a little bit. It's in a flood zone. By the way, flood. A lot of investors don't calculate flood within the cap calculations. That's also important. So get your numbers and also put a little bit of a fluff there just in case when you calculate insurance.
I think, again, insurance has to be part of your team. The same way property management has to be, banks, stuff like that. So make sure that, again, it's something that you already are getting the specific insurance that you need. But again, you are including it as part of that net cap rate calculation. And most of the time you pay it on a monthly basis, but same as taxes, if you pay it annually, just divide it by 12, and that way when you're making the net cap rate calculations, divide it by 12 so everything is on a monthly basis. But definitely include taxes, insurance.
And,
So we have
and usually round it to the next 100.
Yeah.
That's what we usually do. If
Yes.
it's 8, 75, 900.
Yep.
900
Exactly.
just to be safe.
So we have taxes, we have insurance. What another expense we should always include when we're making these net cap rate calculations?
Also, property management.
Property management.
That's an important one.
Mhm.
That's an important one.
Absolutely.
And when you look at the scale of things and look at your taxes, property, insurance, what you're paying for that, and we're gonna go over reserves and all the stuff. The property management being just 10% most of the time is the one that you don't want to go cheap with. You know, is the one that is. If I don't negotiate the 10 for a 9 as long as meaning 10. That's what they charge. 10% a month. So I go with the better service because that's where your biggest bang for the dollar is gonna go. And you're always talking about that, Rafi. The importance of having the right property manager.
Absolutely. Property management is one that you don't want to skimp on. Again, I'm not saying don't shop around, but make sure that you are getting as good a service as possible, because you may save 1%, but then you don't get the kind of quality process that you need to be able to create that lifestyle passive income process. But definitely something that in these net cap rate calculations you have to include, property management. And remember, most of the time there's a new lease fee. There's a couple of initialization expenses. Right when you start, make sure you include those on that first year. And that's one thing that remember, that first year cap rate most of the time is going to be lower than the cap rate in the other years. So the good thing about that is if you're conservative and the first year numbers work, then after that it's going to be a piece of cake most of the time, because most of the expenses, again, in that first month deposit that a lot of property managers require and that kind of stuff, most of those expenses are on year 1. Year 2 and above should be a better cap rate. So use that first year to make your decision, because hey, that's the most likely the lowest cap rate you're going to have in your property. After that, those numbers are going to look better and better as the property seasons.
And just to repeat what you said about the finding the tenant type of fee, allocating the tenant fee that the property managers charge. 99% of the time when people are calculating the cap rate, they do not include that. We do. We base it on a percentage and say, okay, either half a month or a full month. But that takes a big chunk of your first year. But don't worry about it. It's like I said, the first year is your tryouts. Worry about year 2. Because the first year, there's so many things that could come up that it's not really realistic to count on that cap rate.
Absolutely. And I think I just saw, I think Stephanie put there the website for one of the counties here in Tampa. Is that Hillsborough?
Yes, that's Hillsborough County.
Hillsborough County is there. So for those of you looking for tax information, you can go there. So again, and we are back.
Turn off the wire. All right. Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry for that. We have some technical difficulties here. I know, Alan. I know. We have to find a way to connect to a better Wi-Fi signal. I know. Working on it. So we already talked about taxes. We talked about insurance. And we talk about property management. I think those three are three that most people will get. And I would say probably 80% to 90% of the time when we see people giving us cap rates, they include those threes. But we're going to talk about 2 now that I think are the 2 most missed expenses to use when calculating your net cap rate calculator. And the first one is one that, man, we have people fight on this one. We have people saying, "No, my property will never be vacant," whatever. The next one is huge. I just gave it away. Which was the next one?
Vacancy. The vacancy factor.
Vacancy.
Yes.
But wait. He likes that. Wait.
Wait.
Tampa is the best rental market out there. What are the vacancy rates?
Right now I was checking 2.9, so let's call it 3%. Yes.
Why calculate vacancy on my net cover calculator? I'm going to have my property rented all year. I have the best tenants ever.
That's not the way to do it. That's not the way
Period.
to do it. Well, that's just like saying you're buying a stock in the stock market and saying, oh, it's been doing fine for the past 5 years, and all of a sudden something happened. And
It will always go up.
You're crashing, and so even if it's not relevant in 2017, and let's say you dodged the bullet, let's say you dodged the bullet in 2018, and it becomes relevant in 2020, then at least you can average it out by having having a backup plan and calculate it from day one. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Calculate it from day one, and let's say nothing happens, then that's a cushion that gets rolled over. But you want to calculate it before you make your investment. You want to calculate that to make sure you're getting the right investment.
And besides that, there's so many factors that influence vacancy.
Right.
You can have the best tenants in the world, change of jobs, health issues, family health issues, mom and dad, something happens to them, Dios bendiga los míos. But there's so many variables that impact vacancy. You can have, again, the best tenants, the best paying tenants, but something happens that the market is great, and you still have to factor that in. And by the way, just think about it this way. If you lose 1 month of rent, that's 8%, 8.3% impact on your overall rents. 8.3%. So when we're talking about 2.9% vacancy, I always suggest, even on markets like Tampa, where it's 2.9, to use at least 5%. And if you know, and again, this is where your team has to be part of it. If you know that you live in an area where the vacancy rates are 5-6%, I would probably put 10. I will double the market vacancy and use that as my vacancy numbers when calculating a cap rate. Do you agree?
I totally agree. Obviously, Rafi, it depends on the area and what type of property it is. If it's a property that's classified as an A+ property, or B+ or B- or C, you're gonna adjust that a little bit,
Right.
because with the A+ properties, meaning higher end type of properties, tend to be a little better with vacancy.
Right.
But in the worst case scenario, 1 month. 1 month.
I would say at least.
To be conservative, 1 month.
At least. And if you ask any property manager out there, they'll tell you that it takes, 15 to 30 days to bring in a new tenant. So remember, not only you're going to lose that month's rent, you're also going to lose that first month because the new tenant, fee that the property manager is going to take. So vacancy is that one expense that can kill you,
Right.
that can kill your investment.
And some people say, well, I have the deposit, so I could always hold on to that. But guess what? Guess what, guys? Sometimes the deposit is not enough. Not enough to cover repairs or.
I was going to say,
whatever the case
forget
may
the deposit for rent.
Right.
90% of the time, the deposit is not enough to recover and turn that rental for the new. So deposit is out of the question. That's fluff money that if you need to use it, most likely will be to repaint, put new carpets, and do some things, what they call turn the rental to the new tenant. So vacancy is one of those expenses, guys. You need to make sure that you calculate, it is part of your calculations of the net cap rate, because maybe not this year, maybe not the next, but you will be hit by that.
Absolutely.
The next one, so again, to recap, we have talked about taxes, insurance, property management fees, vacancy rate, and the next one sounds like a no-brainer, but again, it's one of those that we have seen people miss a lot, and it is maintenance reserves.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about maintenance reserve.
Well, this is a good one, and we could say so much about this, but I will start with making sure from day one, Rafi, when you get the property, that the rehab is done the right way. So you could try to avoid it as much as possible. That's a layer of protection. That's your first layer of protection.
Now, when you say done right away, again, and we talked about this in one of the previous videos, but when you're rehabbing for a rental, what are the things that you want to make sure that that contractor is thinking of when they're rehabbing a property for renting purposes?
Well, we mentioned this before, the 4-point inspection. So there's 4 points that are extremely important, which is the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, and what is the last one, Rafi?
AC.
AC.
In Florida?
So as long as you got those covered, you can see where everything else will be cosmetics, and you might be okay. But you gotta make sure those 4 are covered.
And pay for a 4-point inspection. You know,
Pay for
4-point inspection is $200-300. You know, but it's worth it. And the other thing that you need to make sure that when you're rehabbing your contractor, well, first get a contractor that has done rentals. That's almost a given. But get someone that has done rentals, and then even on the cosmetic stuff, focus on long-term usability. You want something. You don't want the latest, toilet that has a little button and this button for 1 and that button for 2, and you want something that can be flushed 1,000 times and it works. So even the materials that you use during the rehab, you're looking at not just cosmetically, but in terms of longevity. And that's what you're looking for in terms of rentals. You're looking for longevity. Why? Because if that toilet flushes 1,000 times, that means no cost. No cost. And that's what you want. You want no cost, no expenses.
You want a Tonka versus a Hot Wheel.
Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about. Even
I remember those Tonkas, yeah.
even though they're not the prettiest, but they're heavy duty, and that's what you're looking for. So with that
But
said,
still, maintenance reserves.
maintenance reserve, I will say also 5%, 5 to 10%. But that's the beauty about maintenance reserves. I'm sorry, in vacancy.
Okay.
That they're separate, but at the same time they could help each other.
Impact each other, yep.
Impact each other. So you could calculate it as a whole and say, we're going to say 20% for both, or you could calculate them separately. But guess what? If you don't have vacancy, you still calculate it at 10% for the vacancy. You could use it for repairs. And if you don't have repairs, but you do have vacancy, you could cover that, the repairs. So they go hand in hand. And as long as you calculate it, you be more safe at the end.
And not only that, they go hand in hand because a tenant that has no issues with the property stays longer.
Right.
So, of course, what we see is, this property has a high vacancy rate. Yeah, but the work was not a quality work, so there were a lot of maintenance expenses. So most of the time, it's like that. The one with the highest maintenance expense have the highest vacancy.
Right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
But that's because you didn't probably spend the money on the original rehab to have, the Tonka approach.
Right.
And that's when things, snowball. Now, in terms of maintenance reserve, what's your, recommended amount?
I would say 10% of your purchase price, like, or 0.10. So if you're buying a property for $50,500, buying a property for $100,000. But like I said, that's taking into consideration that you took everything else in account, including the vacancy and everything else, because you've been extra conservative on everything else. And if you have to dip into the vacancy budget, you're able to take some money out of there. But the same, if you want to be conservative, 1 month. 1 month.
Yep.
1 month.
1
So
month.
1 month for vacancy and 1 month for maintenance reserves.
Absolutely. And again, we can't stress enough. That is assuming that you did a rehab focus on rentals.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
If you did a flip rehab and then you rent the property, watch out, because you had that beautiful, granite, and again that beautiful, LED light hanging from the ceiling with the pendant, whatever, and that's the first thing that breaks. And because you did it for a flip, you bought a $200 pendant, and now you have to replace 3 of those. That's $600 gone. So make sure that rehab is a rental rehab, okay? And then calculate for that 1 month. And like we said, every year as the property seasons, things should go down. With maintenance, it's probably the opposite, right? With maintenance, it's probably one that you, the first year, because you did a good rehab, you know what, maybe maintenance expenses that first year are not that high, but then as things progress, start inching up that maintenance because that AC that have 5 years left, that means that next year it has 4.
Or roll over the funds
Roll over.
from year 1 to year 2.
And one thing that you can do is open an account for it. You know, I think if you're disciplined, you know, just open an account and just put that month, you know, rent there. To your point, you leave it there. Next year, you put another month. So now you have 2 months worth of maintenance there. And the great thing about doing it that way is when it happens, not if, when it happens, you can go to that account. It doesn't hurt your cash flow at that moment because you already were planning for it.
Absolutely.
Make sense?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So to go over the 5 things, the first one, taxes.
Number 1.
Government needs to get paid. Insurance. Property management.
3.
Vacancy.
4.
I like that 4. And the last one, maintenance reserves. Number 5. Okay. Now, those are the 5 that we're going to discuss today. But there's a bunch of other little things that you can add, you know, to reserves. Like, for example, if you decide to pay someone to keep up with the yard, you know, all that kind of stuff. So those are expenses that you know. Make sure you include them as much as possible. Those are the top 5 that we say every single net cap rate should have at least those 5. Right?
Absolutely. And the idea about doing this video is that so you have the education.
Mm-hmm.
Next time you get presented a property and you think it's a decent deal, check it out again. Do your own calculations. By the way, there's a lot of cap rate calculators you can find online.
Absolutely.
You Google them, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
there's thousands of results. So make sure that you understand that what they're saying that you're getting is exactly what you're saying. Now you could confirm it by doing your own evaluation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Stephanie, do you have any questions out there or anything that?
I don't see any questions.
We don't see any questions. Guys, remember to share this video in your timeline with your friends so they know that we are here every Friday around 1 p.m. ish. Next Friday we have to see because we are going to a golf tournament next Friday. So we have to find out if we can do it from there. We'll let you guys know.
Or we just let Stephanie do it.
Stephanie by herself.
She's looking at us like, I want to kill you. Right?
Excellent. Well, let's tell them where they can find us.
They could always find us Homes, the number 5. No, I got you. Homes, the number 4.
Homes for income. Homes the number 4 for income. And again, we'll see you next Friday on our Greystone Brownback sessions. I am Rafi.
And this is Jorge.
Thank
See
you
next week.
very much for your time and see you next week. Bye.